Hello everyone, this is BaseP86. This is part 2 of my response to Taylor X04's video, Apologist in Error, Ravi Zacharias. First off, I want to say that this video series may be a bit longer than I first suspected and may contain 4 parts rather than 3. This is not because I wish to overwhelm Taylor with so many counterpoints, but because I wish to clarify the points so that Taylor can fully understand what Ravi's actual claims are, even though some of the issues that Taylor raised are not entirely relevant to the video that he critiqued. I advise my fellow YouTubers that if you have not seen part 1 of this video series, please go back to my channel and watch it before continuing on with watching this video. Having said that, let us begin part 2. Last time I pointed out that Dr. Ravi Zacharias is actually arguing that there is no logical basis with which an atheist can defend his or her own moral affirmations. I cited an example of a fallacious moral justification and substantiated the failure of subjective morality by referring to atheist philosophers Kai Nielsen and Bertrand Russell. If, however, Taylor, you may still choose to argue that the other subjective moral frameworks, which I have not addressed, still work and are not fallacious, then I will be more than willing to take up that challenge and go through each individual moral theory and see if they truly stand up to logical scrutiny. In this video, I will also provide examples of a few other moral frameworks and logically critique them as well. Let us move on to your next set of claims. The next statement that I would like to address is your statement that, quote, "We have set up societies and systems of moral authority to make life easier for all of us." There are actually 3 fallacies that are hidden within this statement. The first one is an appeal to popularity, which states that some laws are generally agreed upon by the majority of society, and therefore those laws should be enforced. There are, however, 2 problems which arise from this. The first one is that if moral relativism is true, especially on the individual standpoint, then logically all viewpoints are equally valid, regardless if a majority says otherwise. Therefore, according to relativism itself, no laws can be enforced on anyone, and every individual should be free to do whatever he or she pleases without receiving any condemnation from anyone else. The second problem is that a majority consensus on right and wrong still does not answer why the action is right or wrong. All it does is show that most people simply agree with each other based on generalized assumptions. If the majority says that an action such as murder is wrong because it hurts people, then that only assumes that the act of hurting people is morally inferior to the contrary. This logically begs the question. Therefore, Taylor, the majority consensus is arbitrary and has no logical basis for its judgment whatsoever. The second fallacy is your statement that we have set up societies and systems of moral authority to make life easier for all of us is an appeal to authority. This fallacy logically assumes the same problem as an appeal to popularity. No authority could logically enforce laws on society if moral relativism is true. Furthermore, it begs the question as to why the authority figure believes that action X is right or wrong. Therefore, you are using more moral affirmations to substantiate your initial moral affirmations you have asserted, which logically begs the question even more. The third fallacy in this statement is a form of the accident fallacy, which is when you apply a general rule to a case to which the general rule should not or does not apply. To say we should make life easier for all of us is to say that all people want life to be easier for them when this is clearly not the case according to moral relativism. This is because people have differing opinions on what is easier regardless of generalized understandings on the matter. Additionally, the question arises as to what exactly is easier by the relativistic standpoint, which also begs the question. This does not provide a definitive solution to what is apparently harder in life. So as a whole, your counter-argument about atheists having no moral code, what kinds of moral codes they can subscribe to, and so on, does not discredit Ravi Zacharias' arguments by its own admission. Your next assertion is that Dr. Zacharias, quote, claims that if you denounce teachings in the Bible that you consider immoral, then you are borrowing from the Judeo-Christian worldview. This is correct, mainly because there is a self-defeating assumption behind it. It is this: if moral relativism is true, Taylor, then logically the teachings of the Bible that you denounce as immoral or evil are logically not really immoral, because the Bible's moral standards would be equally valid to yours. Therefore, denouncing those teachings as immoral would actually violate your subjective framework, because you are invoking that your moral standards are more valid than those of the Bible. Whenever you assume your moral code to be more valid than another's, you are actually invoking an objective moral law, not a subjective one. However, that then brings about a second problem. In terms of objectivity, if you invoke a moral law, then you must logically posit a moral lawgiver. But that's whom you would be trying to disprove in this case and not prove. Therefore, if there is no moral lawgiver, there is no moral law. If there is no moral law, there is no good. If there is no good, there is no evil. So you are actually granting God's existence while at the same time rejecting it in this case, thereby making your argument self-defeating and self-contradictory. Therefore, in invoking that certain teachings in the Bible are immoral or evil, you are again actually granting validity to the Judeo-Christian worldview rather than contradicting it. Now, overall, Ravi is saying that good and evil can only exist if there is a God. Let us keep in mind that the woman being described in the feminism video became an atheist after reading the Bible. Therefore, the only two options for truth which we should assume, at least for the sake of argument, are Christianity and atheism. The woman is actually affirming a moral law and a concept of value. Even you said earlier that it is correct that atheism offers no value or moral code to personhood. Out of the two options, only Christianity gives both of those to humanity. So therefore, Dr. Zacharias is correct in saying that the woman, and even you for that matter, are borrowing from the Judeo-Christian worldview in order to debunk itself. So both of you and the woman are living with systematic contradiction. So again, Taylor, you're only proving Dr. Zacharias' point, not contradicting it. Let us move on to the next point that you make. You say, a quote, "What is there to indicate that Christianity and the Bible might possess objective morality? We also find that Christians face the same dilemma regarding their moral beliefs as ethical theorists like Immanuel Kant and John Locke were both Christians who held very different views on ethics and morality," unquote. Let me start by addressing your question on whether the Christian worldview has an objective moral framework. Even though this is not technically the subject of the video that you were addressing, I will still give a short response. Let me give you an illustration, this illustration. Many years ago, I was actually asked the same question by another atheist who said that the laws in the Old Testament contradict the ones in the New Testament. He asked me, "The law is given by God, is it not?" I said, but a Christian who says you should love your neighbor as yourself, but think that African Americans should not be considered as equals, would be a hypocrite, would he not? He said, "Yeah, I guess, so what's your point?" I said, "All right, sir, let me put it this way. I have just one question for you. How are you able to conclude that all of the laws in the Bible outside of the Ten Commandments were truly God-given if you just admitted that even Christians can be hypocrites?" He said to me, "Are you saying that many of the laws outside of the Ten Commandments were not God-given, but were actually fabrications and misunderstandings made by the religious followers?" I said, "Bingo." That concludes part 2 of this video series, and then I will go on and record parts 3 and 4. So everyone take care, God bless. I will conclude with where I'm going with this illustration. So everybody take care, God bless, see you at part